Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us for what is sure to be a fascinating conversation about art with three incredibly talented artists. My name is Stephen Snyder. I am the Gallery and Communications Manager for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, and we have partnered with the Meek Arts Center to present a fantastic exhibition called A Closer Look, which features three incredible artists: Emily Cowan, Mallory Donen, and Joanne Frewer. And they are all here with us tonight to tell you all about their fantastic and interesting and intricate and inspiring artwork. As I said, the exhibition is on at the Meek Arts Center, which is at 1700 Mathers Avenue, West Vancouver, which is on the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. Here on the North Shore, that is the Squamish Nation, the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and the Musqueam Nation. And we're incredibly grateful to our host nations for their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial, and honored to be able to celebrate all kinds of arts and culture activities on these beautiful lands with our host nations and our community members and neighbors. A closer look is on display right now until June 30th. So please make sure you get up to the Meek Arts Center to have a look at the show. If you have questions or comments for any of our artists, you can drop those in the chat and we will get to that throughout this conversation. So let's get started by introducing you to our fantastic artists. They'll all say a little bit about themselves. Let's start with Emily. Emily, could you please tell us a bit about you?
Thanks, Stephen. Absolutely. Well, my name's Emily, and I'm an artist. Right now, I'm mostly a painter. In my past couple of years, or most of my life, actually, since I was a little kid, I was primarily a cartoonist. And I made comics and I made graphic novels, and I had a great time with that. And then when the pandemic hit, a lot of personal stuff, and I just wasn't in a very creative place for a couple of years, so I stopped. And when I came back into myself and felt creative urges again, I suddenly wanted to be exploring paint. So that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years, and I've been focusing mostly on house and building and room imagery because I find that subject fascinating, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. Seems like a good enough intro to me. Who's next?
Excellent. Thanks so much, Emily.
Okay.
Mallory, why don't you please tell us a bit about you?
Alrighty. Hi, I'm Mallory Donen. My pronouns are she, her, and they. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from University of the Fraser Valley and a Master of Fine Arts from University of Manitoba. I started my creative explorations in photography, but throughout my degrees, I explored all different mediums: painting, drawing, print media. In my master's, I did more digital work and then transitioned towards a cross-stitch based practice, which has been my focus for like the last 7 years. And I've received 2 Canada Council for the Arts grants between 2021 and 22. Last year, I exhibited 2 solo shows in the US, both focusing on craft-based women's practices and labor. And right now I have a fiber piece titled Eerie Simulation Failure to Compute at the Group Invitational Show on Granville Island, which runs until June 16th, and it's at the Silk Weaving Studio. So that's where you can find me right now. I work out of my studio at the City Center Motel in Mount Pleasant. So that's my current stuff.
Thanks so much, Mallory, for sharing. Joanne, could you please tell us a bit about you?
Yes, I can, except I don't even know where to look on this thing. I'm so bad. In this show, I've got the shrines, and I have done lots of other art, different painting, and I studied Chinese painting for a long time. I have one right behind me here. Not mine, but my teacher's. And then I had a Buddha that I brought home from Bali. It was sitting on the shelf behind a little painting, or behind, the painting was behind of a beach. And I'll be darned, it looked like it was on the beach. And that is so cool. So I put it in a frame, and then I'm like, well, got a cup of tea for the Buddha. So then I went to my daughter's dollhouse and got a little thing and made a little scene. And next thing you knew, I'd made 20 of them, 30 of them, 100. And I had my first show, it was 100 pieces. And I've just never stopped. It's a therapy. It's like that little perfect little world. It's like being a little kid again. And it's super fun, like painting and different things I've done. I've loved it, but it's hard work. Like you really have to this is just like so easy. It's just playing and having fun. And when I am around people that are looking at them, they're having fun looking at it. And that is just like the biggest surprise and the most greatest thing for me. I hear people laughing. I mean, so, and same here. I went to the Meek on Saturday night and I went early and the place was packed. Everybody goes early. Just so many people and looking at all of our art. And so I was talking to folks and everybody was enjoying it. There was something, it was really neat. So that's me.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. Thank you all. That was great to get a little peek into your pasts and maybe the travels you've gone on to get to where you are. And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that. So just a tiny introduction to a closer look. For those of you watching who maybe don't know how exhibitions happen up at the Meek Arts Center. So the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, we put out a call for artists and we get in a whole bunch of submissions and we have a jury who looks at all those submissions and tries to find some kind of commonality or interesting thread that might connect them and puts them together in an exhibit. And one of them was a closer look, was these three artists and their really cool work, which really does ask you to really take a look, to stop and really meditate upon what's there, either because of the scale, the detail, or the style, or the subject matter. It really is an arresting collection of artwork that really invites one to just sit and stop and look at it. And we're going to have a quick tour of the exhibit right now to give you a little bit of a taste of what you can expect when you go see a closer look up at the Meek Arts Center. So this is what you see at the Grosvenor Theater lobby. The Meek has 2 theaters and 2 floors. So the Arts Council's lucky enough to be able to put these exhibitions on both floors. So we get to start off with Mallory, your fantastic monochrome series. Which are these wonderful, tiny little textile art pieces that just really invite you to get up close. And beautiful, the framing, the presentation, the matting, it's really quite bold and quite interesting to see. And then we have a fantastic painting here from Emily, this apartment block. Very bold colors, and then we get to move into Joanne's shadow boxes. Again, full of a lot of detail. I'd say it was an interesting exhibit to hang, I have to say, because there are so many smaller pieces than we typically have at the Meek, because they have such large walls. We usually display really large pieces, so it was really interesting trying to give everything enough breadth, enough space, yet fill up all of the walls. But I think you all had more than enough work, and it's all very captivating and eye-catching. And then this is the downstairs theater, the McEwen Theater, where we have the rest of the exhibition.
That's 50 pieces, so it takes a while.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much detail to see too, so.
And I wanted to say too, that really did happen that people slowed down and looked at all the work, the paintings, the cross stitch, and these. It was really interesting.
Haven't seen it in person yet, but Joanne, I love your shadow boxes. They're so full of all these little tiny little stories to look at, and just I think it's wonderful. I can't wait to get out there and see it in person.
It's fun. I have to admit it. It's just fun. I was obsessed with Frida during the pandemic. I had inherited a pile of photographs of her, so I just went kind of crazy with Frida Kahlo.
It's a very colorful exhibition as well.
Yeah.
As exemplified here by more of Emily's fantastic paintings of these buildings, these homes, some of them like hotels, apartment buildings.
I don't think there's any hotels in this particular collection, although that is coming up. These are houses and buildings.
Nice.
Some of those apartment buildings give a hotel vibe.
They definitely do. I mean, I'm attracted to the colors and general like look and shape of a hotel. So like this one's very hotel-like for sure. Could be a motel or something. It's partly up to the viewer.
Yeah. And interesting compositions and angles that you're choosing to capture these buildings. Nothing's like super head on, that you might think of. Everything's got like really interesting angles and perspectives.
I've got a handful of head-on shots in my folder of inspiration pictures that I take, but yeah, I tend not to be drawn to them.
Yeah.
Maybe at the time I paint them, I'm like, no, that's too obvious. You can't just shoot it from straight on.
Yeah, and then we got more of Mallory's fantastic textile work. I love these pieces. They're probably the most representational pieces that you're showing in this exhibit. They're pretty interesting.
Yeah, first one was a pipe. Second one was a fire hydrant. That one's a rail cap. You find those at the tops and bottoms of staircases.
Yeah.
But everything else has a much more abstracted representation.
Yeah. Then again, these ones in particular, and the ones that we sort of saw before them, they still give a little bit of an architectural sense. They kind of feel like a space. Yeah. So that was the exhibit. I just can't seem to get out of this.
You just want to keep looking at the show. It's so fun.
I know. But yeah, so that video doesn't necessarily do everything justice. You really have to get up there and see everything. And really, as the title suggests, take a closer look and really inspect all the details and get everything, all the impact that you can get from there. Thanks for all the comments and sharing as we saw. Now we're going to move on to each artist has selected a work that's on display to talk about a little bit more in depth, to give you a bit more of an idea of where they're coming from with the particular works that they're showing there. Get a little bit more insight into maybe their inspirations, their process, we'll see. And just a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, drop those in the chat. let's start with, let's start with Emily. I'm going to pull up the
Again.
piece you chose. Excellent. Please tell us about this really cool painting.
Thank you. This painting is called Orange Crush, and it's based on a house I saw last year when I was traveling with some friends in the California desert. This one's about halfway between Palm Springs and Joshua Tree National Park for anybody who's been down there. Almost all of my paintings are of houses or apartment buildings or hotels. I've done a couple of pools, but all very much interior scenes, all very much homes, spaces where people live. And I'm attracted to that subject matter for a wide variety of reasons. I'm interested in houses as status symbols. You know, I feel like Vancouver especially, but most places in the world are embroidered in a housing crisis right now. And I find that especially detached single family homes like this one here, I find beautiful and sad in a way, because I don't know, I think we all thought growing up that we would grow up and own a home someday or have a home of our very own. And a really big part of my adulthood has been coming to terms with the fact that I probably won't ever have a home that I don't rent, that one that I have full artistic and creative control over, one that belongs to just me. And that's another large part of I've always been such a homebody, and I've always admired other people's homes. I feel like you can learn so much about who people are by looking at their rooms that they design and the homes that they've chosen to live in. And I feel like a little bit of a sort of outside looking in, like I'll be out walking around in my own city or in cities that I travel to, and I'll see certain homes that just leap out at me and hit me right in the chest in terms of like, oh, if I could afford a home, I would buy one like this. And yeah, I'm sure relatable for a lot of us. So this particular one I was drawn to for a lot of different reasons. It was close to the place, the place where our Airbnb was. So every time we drove out to do something, we would drive past this little place. And every time we drove past it, I knew I wanted to paint it immediately, but I loved it more and more every time we passed. And I think a large part of the reason is the bright orange windowsills, which is where the title came from. Because a lot of the houses I'm attracted to and feel like painting are very heavily manicured and decorated and taken care of. You see a lot of flower pots on the windowsills, or, you know, the door painted a fun color, like landscaping. And this house didn't really have any of that going on. It was a little cement bunker of a home. It did not have a kept yard. They'd sort of let it be natural, which I think makes a lot of sense in the desert. There wasn't any chairs or anything on the porch. There wasn't a ton of ornamentation, but there were these bright orange windowsills. And I don't know if you've ever been to the California desert, but it's just a sea of brown and beige under a deep blue sky. And every time we drove past this little gray home, these bright, colorful windows just popped right off of the road at me. And I was so curious about who might live in this home, who chose to live out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, 45 minutes from the closest town, who chose to keep a very nondescript, sort of like rustic, off the grid home, yet also chose to paint these windowsills such a fun, bright color. And I just, every time we drove by, I wondered more and more about who it was and what I would do differently if I owned this home. You know, maybe nothing, maybe something. And it captured my imagination in the way that so many homes do. And I knew I couldn't rest until I had tried to capture some of it. So.
You did capture it.
Thank you.
Now the shadow on the porch is just so elegant.
Thank you so much, Joanne. I love painting light and shadow. It's such a challenge to get the colors just right.
Feel the coolness.
Yes, and the heat at the back of the.
I knew it was California. I knew it was.
Mm-hmm. I had never been to California before this trip, but yeah, it's like nowhere else I've ever been. I loved it. Cannot recommend that area enough. Sorry?
Nothing. Please go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna ask if there was anything else, but it sounds like you were starting to ask a question.
Yeah, just hearing you talk, it's almost like you're approaching your subjects, these homes, these houses, almost as a portrait, like you're really trying to delve into what's inside, what's going on, right?
Absolutely. I've been struggling with what to call the kind of work that I do. Like people are like, "So do you paint landscapes?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. It's not exactly a landscape. Sometimes some of them have land in them, and it's not a." But yeah, I've been using the term house portrait, um,
That's perfect.
Yeah.
which I think works. It's like if somebody specifically hires me to paint their home specifically, then it's like a proper portrait of a home that the folks know. But if it's one that I choose, then I get to make up the little story for myself and decide, like, oh, what do I think this house is about? And what does the viewer think the house is about? And yeah, thank you.
I know that you also do interiors too. Are you calling those interior portraits then?
So far I've just been calling them interiors. There aren't any in this particular show. I've been a little slower at putting those together, but yeah, I don't know if I have a solid name for those yet, but it's coming. Maybe 2025 we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So in terms of your interiors, I know we don't have any in this exhibit, but I think it's interesting to think about them in sort of contrast or in relationship to the exteriors. Is there one that you're more drawn to?
Oh, versus interior and exterior?
Hmm.
I'm actually a lot more interested in interiors. I feel that you learn so much more about the owner of the home through looking at the way they've decorated their space, especially when the person, I don't know, not to like make it a gendered thing, but I think like I'm interested in women and femme people's attachment to their homes and the history of what society saw women's place in the home as and how that has changed over the years. So I find that really interesting when I'm doing an interior. But it's not as easy to collect reference images. I prefer to work from pictures I've taken myself. I don't like to just go online and find somebody else's photograph. That doesn't feel ethically right to me. So unless I have friends who say that it's okay for me to photograph and then paint their home, it's much easier to just walk by a house and shoot it. So I've definitely done more exteriors so far, and I do really like them both. But yeah, I'm hoping that I can expand into more interiors. I don't know if you can see behind me, but there's one I've done right up there, which might give you a little taste.
Well, if you're looking to expand your interiors and you run out of volunteered friends, I'm happy to, but also you could do like an open call, you know?
I should actually.
People are always interested in helping artists with projects.
That is such a good idea, Mallory. I think I will.
This is also a brainstorming call.
Yes, that's what it is.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Emily. That was
You're
great.
welcome. Thanks for asking.
Next up, let's go with Mallory. You've chosen a really interesting piece. Yeah, please tell us about this work.
Alrighty, this is called Remnants of the Man-Made 4 because it's from a series and the entire series is in the show. And actually really interesting, I had kind of forgotten about when I made this work until Emily was talking about her work and how she started painting, because I did actually make this series during the pandemic. There were a lot of more online exhibitions happening at that time. And so I created this work specifically for a show that was looking for works that was like, I think the theme was changing your perspective. And it was actually through the architecture department at Ryerson University. And I may have mentioned, like I started my background mainly in photography, and I hadn't really gone and taken photos in a while. So to change my perspective, I got out of my home, which I had kind of been contained to a lot during the pandemic, and remembered my love of architecture. So that was me changing my perspective from interior to exterior. Yeah, so I've always had a fascination with buildings, all the lines and shapes, and I love pattern. But then also because I work with a craft process that I learned from women in my family, I'm also interested in that juxtaposition between like the man-made, like hard steel buildings and then the soft, feminine textile medium that I'm using and approaching this work with. Yeah, I'm like, what else do I want to say about this? I'm like, so you
The
never
kind of piece.
Emily,
Okay.
you did so great. You just like me, I have to refer to notes. But yeah, like you said, it's hard to avoid talking about gender when you're talking about processes that have such a historical connection to women's work and women's labor.
Mhm.
And I am just, yeah, interested in the way that, you know, those stereotypes play and against each other, I guess, in which different ways.
Yeah.
You know, buildings, they're, I might be repeating myself, but they're sturdy and strong and like, you know, take a really long time to go up. Or actually, maybe they go up really fast. I don't know, you know, buildings just pop up all the time, but
Yeah.
you know, something that's handmade with intention and thought and care and labor has a very different feel to it. Even just like this, like the sense of like the object, like a handmade object versus a man-made object. They're two very different, like they give a different feeling.
Yeah.
I love that man-made versus handmade. I never thought of that before, but I think it's so clever.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I'm gonna quote myself, something I wrote about this. I'll just read one sentence that I wrote, but the perspective shifts from passers-by navigating through lonely crowds in a concrete jungle inwards towards the home, the domestic space, a space of comfort and control separate from the chaos of the outside world. So there's also just like that feeling of comfort and home also, like being able to, like I said, after graduating, I spent so much, I didn't have a studio right away. I had to kind of shift my practice and processes to more home-based things. And that kind of, that and then also the pandemic, all of that kind of just like made me more like inward focused and like creating from my home. So I think there's also that interesting connection, but also, oh, sorry, I'm like, it's coming back to me. It's like, I haven't talked about my work in a while. What was I just thinking about? Yeah, that connection of like women's work and craft versus art. So because, you know, this type of work isn't always seen as, you know, fine art, there's always that discussion as well. Yeah, and I always try to push the boundaries of that within my work as well.
Yeah. Which is awesome because so much goes into what we traditionally consider a craft or craft work, but it still is just as intense and thoughtful and intentional and emotional as any painting or sculpture.
Mhm.
Except me, and I just play.
No.
You know what I love about this though, Mallory? It's like the more I look at it, it's the kind, you'd never get tired of looking at it. You see these different things, it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
It really is. And it looks like it's modern and yet it's not. I don't know. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah. Another thing I'll say about my process is the photographs that I used for the reference for this series, I also like zoomed into areas of the photo, which created like a lower resolution and more pixelated look than if I had used the whole image.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another thing that I like to do with my cross-stitch work is reference the digital as well. And so when you get that pixelation, you're kind of creating more of a connection to digital photography, and my other work references more like glitch computer failures. So
Oh,
A common thread with a lot of my work.
Yeah, common thread.
there you go.
Now thank you for mentioning that sort of technological pixelated aspect, because I think that's very interesting, bringing this traditional art form, but showing how it is related and how work and labor and design and art making changes over time and over years, over as we progress technologically and with tools and what's ready at our disposal.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That was excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, Mallory. And then next we have a great piece from Joanne that you've selected. Let me just pull that up. Awesome. Yeah, Joanne, could you please tell us about this piece?
Oh, there we go. That, well, that one is fun, kind of. It tells a story because I got that little table and chairs. It was really ugly. It had daisies or something painted on it, and I painted it red. And all of a sudden, it just reminded me of Mexico. So I had all these little pieces. I've been to Mexico a few times, and since I've been into the miniatures, and they are totally, it's part of the culture. So I bought all these little things. But this one, on the table, there's dice. There's 2 cups and a coffee pot. I bought that coffee pot on the street in Mexico City. But there's also a bottle. So they're, spiking the coffee, gambling. And there's a key on the table. So it's kind of a mystery as well. The Virgin of Guadalupe on the wall, because every Mexican home has the Virgin of Guadalupe. There's a picture of a statue, Mexican famous statue on the wall. That's a match cover that I got down there. And the 2 little pigs in the corner are because one time I was in Mexico and we're having dinner with our feet in the sand kind of place on the beach. And the electricity went out. Well, they didn't blink an eye. Next thing you knew, there was candles and the food was still there and it was great. And a pig came running through. The waiters chased the pig down the middle of so the little piggies ended up into this place too. And I don't know, all the little things I've collected over so many years, I can't remember where I got them all anymore, but mostly thrift shops and garage sale kind of places. But what you gals were saying too about home and house and all that, these pieces, it's continually peaceful and fun, and it doesn't change. And as I got into the miniature kind of world, I hear that theme again and again, the restfulness and the continuity. There's never going to be dirty dishes in the little kitchens. They're just always just right there waiting. And in my pieces, I put so much stuff in them that there's always something else you see that you didn't notice the first time around. So, oh, wait a minute, what's that? And so then you are slowed down. It does. It just happens by itself. You don't have to think about it. Oh, I have to slow down. No, you just do. I find again and again, people are just like, wait a minute. And then they bring their friend and they all look at it together. And yeah, you just stop for a minute. And I never thought of that when I was making them, that it would be fun to look at as they were to make, or that you would want to slow down because it'd take a long time to make them. But it's kind of just a happy accident, really. So that's that. And I'm still making them. I've made about 500. Yeah, I have so much stuff because everywhere I went, I collected it. I mean, the little red chilies are from Chinatown, and you know, it just goes on and on. So, but now I'm slowing that down. This show is just a nice completion, and getting my paints out for the summer. So that's it.
I'm always curious, as with any artist, where they start. But I'm curious with your works, Joanne. Do you have a concept in mind?
Yeah, there's one thing I always start with, and that's I look around my studio. It's very organized. There's just trays of all the goodies, and I think about what is my favorite thing that I love the most in this whole room. And that day it was the yellow plate that's on the wall. That's fabulous, handmade little ceramic thing from Mexico. I want to make a room with that plate. And I went from there. Oh, it's got to be a kitchen. No, I want it to be and then I just start putting things out. So by the time I get everything out that might go in, and there's 100 things on the table. And then I slowly, narrow it down. And I always have way more than I need for whatever. And, when to stop and when to add more and all that kind of stuff. That part takes hours. Gluing it in, I'm good at that now. I've got that down. But the organizing it,
the decision
takes hours. Yeah, I'm a glue master. I've got the tweezers and the thing. Oh, yeah.
So would you say the majority of the items that you put in are found? Like how much do you make? Like I know like you painted like the chairs and the table.
Right. I don't make that much, but like I make the little tables and shelves and stuff, which like these shelves, I make them with scrap wood. Like I'm big on Rona stir sticks, the pieces of wood that they give you for your paint.
Those are great.
I use those all the time, and wood that they.
Yes, I'd like a sample of paint. Thank you for the free stick.
Yeah, I ran out. Can I have some more? I'm sorry. But I love finding broken little bits and pieces of stuff, which I am always searching for, and that I love using that kind of stuff, little scraps and this and that. That's the most fun. Like a little wooden bowl that's really the cap for a Cholula hot sauce, and reimagining little objects. Yeah.
I haven't done it. Oh,
I was just gonna say, like, it's just so fascinating. Like, I know you're saying sometimes you can convert something that might not be what it looks like in here.
Yeah.
Like the lid thing, but it seems like you have found so many miniature things, and that just in itself is like a talent, like to be able to source all these. And
Oh yeah.
And to curate them, to choose which pieces go in which little room. And I have to imagine that you store them in a really cool way.
Oh, yeah. Really, it's, but I was really on the hunt for about 15 years, and I don't have to look anymore. I have everything.
Nice.
Two of my sisters live in Hawaii, and they both were running gift shops, and one of them is an antique vintage store. She would find me things, and we would go vintage shopping and hunting year after year, and garage sales, flea markets, thrift shops, all that. And then when I travel, like when I was in Mexico, I asked my friends, where can I go? And they send me to this little town, a little miniature store. And it's so much fun. But even when I go to the beach, I'll find a little piece of wood or a certain shell but that's a really fun part too.
So the ones that you have in the show, you were saying, and it looked like there were a lot of Frida ones, there were a lot of Buddha ones.
Yeah.
What are some of the other like themes that show up for your work? 'Cause
Um,
there's so many. I mean, there must be other
I
themes that we're
know.
not seeing here.
Well, there's the Frida ones. There's a whole Hawaii series, and I'm begging this really cool place in Hawaii to have a show for me because I made, again, during COVID, I used to live in Hawaii. My family lives there.
Mm.
And so I made all these Hawaii ones. They came out so good. But there's the devotional ones with Kuan Yin and Buddha. But there's also the just little statues and stuff that I've found. I've been to Chinatown in every major city, and I'm astounded with these simple little ceramic things that they sell for a few dollars that are, like, to me, just a piece of the most beautiful art. And I love elevating it, just the most humble, even like a little piece of broken dollhouse furniture, and I'll make it into a French antique, just upcycling, recycling in an artistic way. And it's effortless. It's like it's just fun. It's there's no angst involved. It means a lot, and there's a lot of time, but it's just pure joy. It's just pure joy. And I'm, been doing art a few years longer than you gals, many years. And to come across this kind of therapeutic art form has been a real lifesaver. And that's enough about me. Go on, Stephen.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank all of you for those really great insights into what you do. We've got a comment here from Jess McCormick. They say, "So beautiful. The light and shadows are captured perfectly."
Thank you, Jess.
And in parentheses,
Jess.
this is Jess. Not sure what they're talking about, but you could apply that to all of them.
We all did great in that.
We did so good.
It was great to hear some of the common themes come up just as you were all talking about your artwork. I didn't want to sort of get into that at the beginning because I was hoping it would come up and people would be able to discover it as we go. But there's this real sense of your interest in space and making a space for yourselves, or how other people make spaces and a kind of sanctuary almost that your artwork kind of gets at. I think that's a really interesting
It is.
point that you all tackle from very different ways.
Yeah. I mean, homes are the spaces where life happens, right? I think we all kind of touched on that in different ways, like Stephen said, and just coincidentally, all three of us together.
Yeah, I was saying, I started, or I don't know what I'm saying. I didn't have a studio for a while, is what I was trying to say. So I was making a lot of my cross stitch work from home. And although I have tried to separate that now that I have a studio, I still find myself making stuff at home. Cross stitch. I can't get away from it. But yeah, I think it's also because it's like that comfort of the space, like where you spend, most of your time, and it's hard to not do the thing that you love or that brings you that, therapy or meditation, like you said.
In the space that you love. I can't afford a real studio yet, but I'm more than happy to be making my works about home from my home. It's my favorite place to be, and I think we can all relate to that as well.
And this an idea of elevation has kind of come up. Emily, you're talking about elevating the places that you're looking at, but also this idea of the homemaking of women's work, and you mentioned that as well, Mallory. and elevating the craft that you're working in. And Joanne, these tiny moments and these objects that you're elevating into a whole other concept. I think that's very fascinating as well. This need to uh, really champion these ideas or these notions. Is that something that you've always kind of done in your artwork, all of you? Just really wanting to this idea of elevating these common things, common.
I think for me, it's a relatively new goal. Like, over the pandemic, or the pandemic is still happening, but over like the lockdown years, the early years, when I stopped doing comics, I stopped drawing, I wasn't really doing anything creative. So most of my creative energy was just going to like decorating my house and setting up a cute little trestle table and stuff. And I felt a lot of like completely untrue, but like I felt a lot of shame about that. And I remember thinking like, oh, I used to be an artist and now I'm just a woman who decorates her home. And I thought that about myself. And then I was like, you would never say that to any of your female friends, to your mother, to anybody else. Why is it any different from you? And I realized I had something inside me that made me feel like, as a woman and as like a feminist, like to be interested in homes and homemaking and creating beautiful spaces was somehow like not good enough. And again, that's not how I actually feel for other people. But when I found that in myself, I thought that would be an interesting thing to explore through art. So that's a little bit about where that's coming from for me right now. Just to share.
It seemed like all of us had something that was comforting about what we were doing. I can picture you, Mallory, at home, with it on your lap, and even just the colors and stuff of your paintings. There's a comfort. There's a softness. Yeah, I wouldn't have put those things together until hearing you all talk about your work and seeing it like with a fresh eye tonight. But I can feel that. And I think that's that womanly thing that we have in common.
Yeah. No, I think it's like that attention to detail. I also like noticed that like Emily, like I hadn't seen your paintings in person, and yeah, I haven't seen the whole show yet. I didn't get a close look at Shannon's because they weren't hung yet, but yours were like against the wall when I was there, and I was like, oh, they're so crisp. Like I had to like get up and like I was like, that's a crisp line. I like this line. Like
thank you. I try really
and that to jump on what you were saying, Stephen, about the like taking things that are common and elevating them. Like I think that I've always been drawn, like my eye has always been drawn to things that maybe not other people notice, or maybe it's just that I have like an awareness of a lot of things, it feels. So when I got into photography, I would always take, pictures of, the first thing I saw, but then I would like dig in closer. And then I remember I would like go through my digital camera roll with my parents, and they'd be like, what? Like they would be on the walk with me and they would be like, what was that? Like, where did you find that? How did you see that? So for me, I think I have always kind of like veered towards those type of things. But even like something as simple as that series in the show that we didn't talk about, but it was in the, oh my gosh, in the tour, the 3 most representational pieces I have in the show, fire hydrants, that has been something I have always been like gravitated towards. I think it's just because I like repetition. I like things that are like you can see everywhere. So kind of like you, Shannon, anywhere I travel, I'm looking for fire hydrants. I'm like, what do they look like here? And I always just have to like capture them. And yeah, I'm like, it makes me feel connected to like everybody in the world. Like we'll have this. Our version of this.
That's cool. I'll never look at a fire hydrant the same again.
Like, wow, what a beautiful fire hydrant. Mallory would love this one.
That was amazing. Thank you all for a great conversation. a chance to look at your really stunning artwork and learn a little bit more about it and about you as artists. And thank you everyone who has joined us for this talk and everyone who is going to watch it later. If you have the chance, please check out a closer look at the Meek Arts Center. It is on until June the 30th. There are links in the description of this video to the Meek, so you can figure out how to get there, figure out when to go, links to the Arts Council so you can find out more about us, and links to our three amazing artists so you can stay up to date with what they're getting up to in their creative endeavors. So again, I would love to thank Emily Cowan, Mallory Donen, and Joanne Frewer for sharing your artwork with us and for having this fantastic conversation. It's been really insightful. It's been a blast. You've been great fun.
Thank you for
Thanks,
hosting this talk.
So until next time, we'll see you here again in a few weeks for another artist talk. And until then, please check out a closer look at the Meek Arts Center. Take care.